And we're joined now by, well, for the second time, by the former Brexit Secretary David Davis, who's written a fascinating letter to every single Tory MP and Minister, which they received yesterday in their inbox. It's a stirring message to the Tory faith saying, for God's sake, unite. Unite behind the Prime Minister, unite behind some key policies, and the Tories can still win the general election. David joins us now. David, in your letter, which we've done in the Mail today, you invoke the spirit of the great Margaret Thatcher. In 1986, she spent all of that year way behind the Labour Party in the opinion polls, and by May or June of 1987, she won with a landslide of 100.
Yeah, and remember, there were sort of devastating things that happened in that year. I mean, we had the Attorney General threatening to send the police into Downing Street. I mean, even under the recent shenanigans, we haven't had that. We had Michael Heseltine resign. I mean, it puts all of the current comings and goings into the shade. He was a huge, big beast of the jungle, as it were, in those days. And one other thing, I mean, I've been listening to you just at the end with your colleagues talking about the enthusiasm or not for the Labour Party and what the polls say about that. The recent by-elections have all been very low turnout. I mean, it's not 30-40% turnout. You compare that with what John Major faced when we lost Ribble Valley, 70%. That was an explicit rejection of the Tory government today. It wasn't a sort of a plague on all your houses. It said, we don't want you, So we've been here before. In fact, we've been in worse places before. And what a lot of the younger MPs and indeed young journalists, I have to say, I mean, people like you, Andrew, young journalists say to me is this 92 or 97? And I say to them, it's actually up to you. In 92, we joined together and treated the opposition as our main enemy. In 97, we treated each other as our main enemy. And that's the big difference.
And David, at the moment, you've got Tory MPs knocking spots off each other in public in a most unedifying way, particularly over the Rwanda deal, where we saw 38 Tory MPs abstain last month, unprecedented to do so on the first stage of legislation. Some of those, of course, are standing down at the next election, I think 8 or 9 of them, and some of them have majorities of over 30,000, so they're not bothered about Tory turmoil.
Yeah, well, there is a bit of that, I'm afraid. I mean, every single one of us, every single Tory MP was elected by their party. I mean, I'm not elected in Holton Price and Howden because I'm David Davis. I'm elected because I'm the Conservative representative here. That's the driving force. And because of that, we owe each other a duty. We owe the public a duty. Do we really want to behave in such a way that we actually deliver a victory to Keir Starmer, deliver 5 or 10 years of Labour government, or are we Conservatives? Do we really want to deliver a Conservative government? And if the answer's the latter, we want to deliver a Conservative government, then we've got to behave properly to do it. It's been interesting. I mean, since I sent that email yesterday, I've had dozens of responses from my colleagues saying, thank God you've said it. At last somebody's saying this. We have to learn to behave. And that's what we do.
The thing is, David, you can bring the parties together, but a lot of people will just decide, do we like that man as Prime Minister or do we not? Do we want to give the other guy a go for a while? And do you think Rishi Sunak is sufficiently popular with the electorate as an individual to get people to put a cross in that box for him?
Well, there are two aspects of that. One is that's part of the reason the examples I picked. And I think Andrew referred to it, when in 1986 all those things were going wrong, everybody blamed Margaret Thatcher for it. Literally, everybody blamed her for it. And she came back from that with 100 majority within a year, having lost massively in some by-elections and so on. So that's one half of it, Prime ministers are very often unpopular in the latter part of their terms. The second aspect, and then they recover from it. The second aspect is, can you imagine how it will come back? Well, look, just think. You've been talking about Rwanda. Let's imagine for a second the Tory party actually decides to deliver Rwanda, and we start getting people sent there. You know what's going to happen next? Denmark, Germany, other European countries are going to copy it. And it's suddenly going to go from being a liability of a policy to an advantage. We've got a budget coming up in which, for the first time since the COVID crisis, we're going to have a lot of money. structurally we're going to have a lot of money. We're going to have probably at least 30 billion overhead. We can actually cut taxes. We can behave like a Conservative government. We've got a mayoralty election, which there's a decent chance of us winning. All those things will change the nature of the battle we're looking at, but it won't. None of those things will happen if my party, my colleagues, behave as though they're all going to lose and start to run away. I make the analogy in the letter of a medieval battle. People started to die in a medieval battle when they got to the point when one side gave up. Sauve qui peut, they started to run. That happened in 1997. And guess what? All the people who turned and ran lost their seats by bigger majorities than those who stood and fought. We should all stand and fight. We owe it to the country. We owe it to our supporters. Do we really think you say you don't like Sunak. Do you really think this stand-for-nothing Labour Party is going to do a better job? I certainly don't.
OK.
Fascinating.
Brilliant.
To David Davis. And congratulations, David, on your knighthood. He is now Sir David Davis, and richly deserved, I would say. Good to talk to you. Happy New Year. Now.